First of all, thank you all for joining for this last hard session just before the food. I'm Nashville, Product Marketing Manager for SUSE Enterprise. So my role is to all the messaging and the product, anything around SUSE Enterprise platform. On the marketing side, product marketing, that's what my role is. Last year we launched Multimodal operating system, SUSE Enterprise 15, and that's the reason you see the Multimodal IT infrastructure here. And the reason for that is most of our customers, and I'll check with you all guys too, are going through some kind of a transformation. Right? They had traditional infrastructure, they have some pieces of software-defined or around software-defined. So they have a mix of IT infrastructure pieces where whether it's on-premise, cloud, or whatever. And that's what we call multimodal. So you don't have one specific type of infrastructure, you have multiple nodes. And that's why we use it multimodal IT. And the goal for the reason that the OS was designed for multimodal IT was to precisely do this, accelerate the transformation. So wherever you are in your journey, right, whether you just started, or you're halfway through, or you're getting to the peak, right, depending on where you are, you can choose the pieces that you need, or have that right understanding, and then go from there. Right? So the acceleration transformation was the theme there. So I'll go through some of the industry trends which are driving the IT transformation. So AI is from the application perspective. So this stats is from this year's Gartner conference. 2 years ago, I was at a similar conference with Gartner. They had this Gartner IT infrastructure conference in December 2 years ago. And they had a keynote by Schlumberger. And they're oil and gas company, and they were talking about AI and machine learning. And I was a bit surprised because for oil and gas company, you think that, why would they need to? They would be probably one of the last people to embrace technology and such. So but AI and ML, it's coming more and more intersecting with pretty much every industry, right? Whether it's IoT or other pieces. And now I was intrigued that it's actually it's now creating business value. That's why dollars are there, and that's what is. And that when the dollars get attached, that's when the spending, the business drivers of spending come into picture. And another interesting stat was for data centers. It's their projection is from 4% to 50% in 2022. So these numbers may sound optimistic sometimes or aggressive, but the point is that these are the transformative forces, right? So that's what I'm trying to get to here. Now let's look at it from the application perspective. So just if you go back 5 years ago, microservices were just getting started, Docker was just getting started, containers was just getting started. But 90% of all new apps, it's almost majority. Right? Every app would have some microservice architecture in, if it's not 2022, maybe it's 2025. Right? But the idea is that most of the applications are getting into that area. If you look at cloud natives, almost 1/3 of production apps will be cloud native. The reason we are talking about this is because you have these traditional infrastructures, you have your SAP databases, Oracles, and ERPs. But in the front end, where you're doing your development and you're tapping into your data analytics or such, you will have some kind of applications which are using microservices, or containers, or they're getting cloud native and such. So this is coming from the application app. Now, to be very specific, let's come from the risk perspective, right? As a customer, you might still want to say, well, okay, I'm doing some transformation, but do I really need to do it, right? So that's why we painted it in red. If you're in red, then it's trouble. So from one of their data reports, they think that 70% of organizations who do not adopt either the architectures or the methodologies or they embrace the transformation, and they're still either, and this could be for a variety of reasons, either they're entrenched into a situation where they cannot change, right? Either from dollar perspective or anything else. Then they are in trouble, 70% of them. So sometimes when you're looking at IT transformation, you're only looking from the positive side, right? Okay, what can I get out of it? But there's a risk also. If you do not do it, then what happens, right? It's not just Gartner. So we looked at IDC, and this is just from March actually, I was there at IDC Directions Conference. They say there's a digital divide. It's saying the same thing in a different way. What that means is that 50%, close to less than 50% are digitally determined in their opinion. What that says is these 46% of companies across the industries are having some kind of transformation aspect in there, which they're dealing with or have adopted. But 54%, more than half, are digitally distraught, which is like saying more like point blank, no sugarcoating, right? So that's coming from the risk side, right? So if you're not doing the transformation or you're thinking or hesitating, then that could be a troubling sign. Now, if you were at the keynote today, you saw the cloud from, the word cloud from Michael Miller. He was talking about transformation. This is from Google Analytics. So if you search for transformation, it pops up as one of the things. The reason for that is it is going to be a multi-year trend, right? And again, I'll point from the IDC keynote. They started with, okay, is the transformation dead? Because the marketing people, they would want to say that because they want something interesting, jazzy, cling on to some other term, right? But IT transformation is real, right? It's going to be a multi-year trend. It's a big wave. Let's keep some count. And then there's some numbers. Digital transformation spending over the next 5 years, 7.5 trillion. So that is like overall IT spending, but the digital transformation aspect of it, right? So if you look at the numbers, they're huge, and they're growing in double digits. Now the the industries who are embracing it actually see real dollar benefit. So if so manufacturers who are digitally oriented or have had some kind of transformation are showing a profit growth. The people who are not, those are the distraught ones, right? And they're showing losses. So either you could have that the dollars come to you or the dollars get taken away from you, right? It's going actually both ways. And now let's get to the technology aspect. So this transformation, it's happening at different points and in different areas. One way to look at it is, okay, we see three areas: cloud, edge, and traditional. Right? Traditional could be on-premise or it could be mixed. And whatever components you have there, whatever systems you have there, that is driving the requirements for the underlying platform. Right? So whether you're doing your deployments in cloud, you're doing developments there, or you're doing in edge or traditional, the things that you do there actually drive requirements into the platform. That's what I will get into it. That how the platform starts becoming relevant because of, and you can look at it from different ways. So this is one way to look at it. And that's, so I'll just re-summarize multimodal IT here and then we'll get into more technology things. So it's simply basically a coexistence of all those technologies. You could have your traditional data center, cloud, containers, you have different type of methodologies, whether it's DevOps, agile, or waterfall. And to support all that and to make that, to have the right platform to enable the transformation the right way, you can call it a multimodal platform, right? And this platform is typically invisible. You want it to be invisible because your platform is giving you 99.99% of uptime. So typically you'll never see it, and that's how it should be, right? But if you start seeing it, then that's a problem, right? And that's why many times you won't have a conversation about operating system and the platforms when you talk about the application workloads and such. So here in today's conversation, we're actually trying to tie that up and trying to show you, okay, the platform, typically should be invisible, and what are the things from the transformation perspective, from the multimodal IT perspective, what are the requirements that go into the platform and that actually show up in, if you buy SUSE Linux Enterprise, server, or any other flavor. Now, I'll go through 3 use cases just to show you some applications here. So in this use case, you have your traditional infrastructure, you have either SAP running, SQL running, Oracle or ERP system, right? And think of a bank. So bank, 10 years ago, all they had was a website. You could get into the website and get into their accounts and such. Over the last 10 years, those websites have become more interesting. You now have it on mobile phones and such. So what that means is you have some container applications which are tapping into your backend. It could be an analytics application. So that you're designing as a microservice, as a container application, but it's tapping into your traditional infrastructure. So you want to have both, because that's giving you the 5 nines, and that's giving you the flexibility and agility to meet your customer demands. Because you want to change those applications quickly, you want to make them bite-sized, and to maintain and such. Here's the second scenario. So now let's imagine there are multiple IT teams within the company. So you embrace the new applications, you're doing interesting development. Now your IT teams want to have the applications portable. So they don't want to know or care that much whether you're running it on a physical server or a virtual machine. If you have an Apache server, your IT admin may want to run it as a virtualized machine, in the virtual machine, on a bare metal, on the cloud, or containerize it. Right? And their ideal scenario would be that they don't have to worry, okay, what's the underlying platform I'm using? Right? That's where the OS layer comes along. And their life will become simpler if they have to manage only one code stream, right? Instead of multiple, depending on where your workloads are deployed. Right? So they can start looking at it more from a workload perspective and less from whether they're running it in this location of the organization where it's all servers or virtualized machines, right? So those silos don't have to be there. And that's enabled by, if you have a common code base, then that can get enabled. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting. As your company grows, you have other things. You put in storage. Now, some of your teams may be using OpenStack Cloud to manage your compute or network and those resources. You may have some edge devices. So let's say you're a manufacturing company. You deploy Raspberry devices in your factory to get data from your machines. That's a typical. That's actually, we have a customer who does that. So that's your IoT, and that becomes your edge. Now, edge, it could be actually anywhere, right? It's not really defined by a location. It's more anything which is not in data center can be an edge, right? And that again drives requirement into the OS, because now the platform that you're getting, should it support an IBM mainframe or should it support a Raspberry Pi? Right? There are two ends of the spectrum. Now, your IT teams are still now on the developer side. They have Docker, they have Kubernetes if they're orchestrating thousands and thousands of work instances there. And the applications could be cloud native, or you could be just running on cloud or going back and forth if it's a hybrid cloud environment. So this is your traditional, and this is software defined, right? And this OpenStack Cloud kind of straddles between them. So all these things at a high level, when I'm a CIO or CTO or a director at IT level, I'm looking at a high level. I'm not focused here, right? How are these things run? But once I make the decision down there, then all the other things above actually start. I don't have to worry about strategically what's going to happen in 5 years if I deploy edge device, right? Or if I start doing public cloud. Today I have 90% on-premise, 10% cloud, but in 5 years I'll be probably 80-20, the other way, right, 20-80. And so whether I'll be ready or not, right? So if you're a CIO or a director or a person who's looking at it from a top level, typically you don't put that down. But your strategic decision actually makes it happen that you can make the decision now and not worry about what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years, right? And that's where the multimodal OS comes into the picture, where it enables and provides a platform so you don't have to worry whether you're here, straddling, or all the way to the right? And I'll actually give one more example here. So today we had an announcement with Intel, partnership announcement that we did, a press release. where they are doing Xeon processors. That's a Cascade Lake scalable processors, and they had a joint press announcement with us where we are saying that we're supporting Intel Xeon. And in January, we had another joint press announcement with Intel, SAP together for Optane DC persistent memory. Now these are hardware things, right? So Optane DC, and that was for SAP HANA running using the persistent memory aspects of Optane DC. So that's all here, right? So your Optane DC memory that gives you persistence. So if you reboot an SAP HANA system, instead of waiting for an hour to get the terabytes of data moved out of the system and back in the reboot, now it takes 5 minutes. So 12 times performance improvement. Now that's coming from a hardware level, right? Because the system is optimized for your persistent memory, that's why SAP HANA can take advantage of that. Now at the CIO level, now you can think differently, right? If you're deploying SAP HANA, your downtime risk is actually minimized, right? You're looking at a 5-minute window versus hours, and if you have a system of 100 of those, then your days, right? Now with Intel Xeon, when they announced it, actually they talk about workflows. They're not talking about just one CPU that they added. They talk about the whole family. And in this release, in this press release also, they talk about Optane DC persistent memory, even though that's been there for the last 3 months. The reason is because they say the workflow could be from cloud to a core to the edge, right? And as if your systems are optimized, workload optimized, so you have the right hardware, right OS, and the applications can then tap into it, then everything actually works very nicely, right? So now let's come to the OS aspect, and we know the trends, we know what's driving, what are the key drivers that drive the requirements. Now let's see the journey of the OS. So this is 20 years ago, and it was there for 10-15 years. It was a monolithic image. SUSECON enterprise server started, right? That was one big blob, and it met the needs of that time. Then there were 5 to 10 years when things were modular, because at this time you wanted something more than monolithic, right? You wanted high availability, but that couldn't be put into the OS, so it was like a module outside. You wanted real-time aspects, so you created a module for that. If you needed cloud, we added that module. So this was how it was progressing, because now more functionality was needed out of the system, so you could put everything in that monolithic blob, and we started breaking it up, or adding more pieces around it, so you could pick and choose what you wanted. Now, we are actually hypermodular, or modular plus. What that means is, if you look here, right, this is a dev system. So here, all this is an installer. So you start with that, you add the server module, you add your web and script module, and live patching, and done. That's your development system. Right? If you want an SAP system, you start again with the unified installer, that's the starting point. You add the server, you add high availability, you add SAP solution, that's your SAP system. 2 different systems. Right? Now, if you're doing containers and Kubernetes, you are on the right side. So you would start with the SUSE platform that already has a micro OS, which is purpose-built for the microservices. So micro there doesn't mean the size, it's basically the microservices aspect of it. So there, the need for those applications, they're single purpose for microservices, for containers, and that OS is also built on the same platform. So whether you're running, if you have 2 teams, or 3 teams, one is dev, one is SAP, and one is developer team which is working on containers, all of them are running the same code base. It's one code stream. Right? And that's it's the need of the hour today. Right? And this is where we are right now. And this will continue for several years. I think we'll just change the things around here, but you would see much more modularity, where you want exceptional modularity, right? And these things should work actually more together. Things where here you want transactional updates, you will want them here too, right? So things like that. By transactional updates, what it means is you should be able to update every day, every hour, depending on what you need. You're not doing it manually, it's cluster-based, so the whole cluster gets updated on its own. On the traditional server side, you don't do the updates like that. Right? So things like that. So this is the space that we are in right now. Now, if we change the multimodal platform to multimodal OS, then this is how it looks, right? So it is enabling whether you have containers, whether you have data center, whether you have microservices, it just fits in right. Now, in this scenario, now practically what happens is you have your IT departments, and you have on-premise deployments, you have cloud deployments, and you're not going to rip them off and just throw them out, right? Ideally, what you would want is you want bridges. So you have your servers here. Right? This is your databases, ERP systems, analytics, and you're also having cloud-based workloads. So you're not going to throw that away and just embrace cloud. That's not going to happen, right? So you need bridges. And that's the focus of providing the multimodal OS kind of scenario. You can build the bridges and not worry about, okay, I have this or that, or you don't need to make the binary decision. And same, if you have a data center, you want container applications, you need a bridge between them. This is just two examples. But the idea here is that neither financially nor from a company perspective, you would never want to do a rip and replace or a huge change, makeover. It will be typically incremental. You take out something and put something new, and then make sure it works with everything, and then you kind of change the pieces, their ratios over time. So that's from a business case perspective. When you're building a business case, that's the thing behind it. Right? It's not rip and replace, it's building bridges. Now let's go under the hood. How does the common code base and everything goes together? So multimodal architecture, let's start from bottoms up. So common code base, that's your fundamental starting point, and that makes sure that all the hardware architectures are supported. Whether you're running an ARM, Raspberry Pi, or IBM Z or x86 or anything in between, power and everything. So the common code base supports both, all of that. And then you go up. So let's go from left to right. In the traditional infrastructure side, you have your standard server, desktop, SAP systems and such. They are derived from that platform. Now the STI product, OpenStack Cloud, that kind of straddles the both CAS platform, cloud application, or storage. They are based on the same platform too. So now when you're wearing an IT admin hat, you would love this. Or you would want to have this kind of a situation where you don't have to worry, okay, what's below this? I just want to worry about what I need. And then your platform should be able to support that. Right. And from the services aspect, these will have either containers, virtual machines, or appliances. Right. Now we'll get into some very specific requirements at how these are translating together. So on a traditional infrastructure, typically you would have that monolithic image or huge servers, but they cater to multiple use cases. They're not purpose-built for one. On the software-defined infrastructure side, you would have single use case, very specific. This is what I want my system to do, and that's how you build it. Installation-wise, you would have manual, because you're not doing it that often. 6 months, 9 months, maybe a couple of years sometimes. On the other side, it's typically decentralized. You're having a Kubernetes cluster, 100 nodes, 1,000 nodes, and you want them to be automatically installed. Updates. Do you want transactional updates on the right side? Not so much on the left side. So things will update quickly here. You would not want things to change. So you want 6 months, year, sometimes quarterly, depending on how your IT systems are designed. So this is just a summary that underlying when we designed the multimodal OS, we took care of these kind of disparate requirements, which were coming to us from the customer side. So a customer, like a large customer, they would say, okay, I want this as well as I want this. And they've been talking to us for the last 5-7 years. Right? So now, with the SLE 15, we kind of package it together. And now this is how it's going forward. So it results in basically at a high level when you say we're getting rid of the stack pieces. right? And it's more of common code base and modularity, right? So at a high level, that's how it looks like. Now we'll just re-summarize the common code base part here. It gives you three things. First, hardware architecture, invisibility, or you can call it silicon agnostic computing, right? So your computing applications don't have to worry about what silicon you have. It's Intel, x86, or IBM mainframe, it doesn't really matter. Whether you have, if a security fix comes in, then it's for everything. You can pretty much have a patch everywhere. Or you would know that the patch is available for everything because it's the same common platform. From applications perspective, you can start looking at it more application perspective. So you're looking at, okay, what workloads I want, what kind of systems I want, and that's how you design your systems. Right? You don't go bottoms up and say, okay, I have this OS and now I need to figure out what all things will run here, then I have another silo here, which is virtualization centric, and I know only these kind of workloads will work here, or these kind of applications will work here, and you could have a third silo, which could be just the new stuff, like Dockers, containers, and such. So you can break those silos and start thinking more from top down. Systems management becomes easier. You do live patching, you use SUSE manager, and you can patch everything. Right? And you have one patch, let's say you have a security fix in Apache that runs everywhere, and you can just have the one, you know that if the patch is coming, it will be there for everything. Now let's go through a quick example of modular plus, right? What does it really mean? So at a very simplistic level, everything is a module now. What does that mean? So let's construct a C server here. So this is a server, and you start with some common code-based modules. You start with a base system, you put in some desktop apps, then you add a server apps module, you add a legacy module, and then if you want it to be desktop, you add a desktop module. That becomes your system, and at the top you put high availability. So that's your highly available system. As you grow or as you move along, you can get some more modules from your pool of modules. So simplistically, that's what it is actually, module plus. Everything at the bare, everything is broken down to a module so it can be easily added and managed. Now, one of the advantages for a system admin comes here. When you're deploying a new platform or a new OS, you don't want to spend too much time, months, figuring out what the system will look like 1 year down the line. What I buy now, will it meet my needs 12 months, 18 months, 24 months down the line? You can buy a minimal system and then go from there, right, depending on what modules you use. So that again comes to your business case. How do you, it saves your resources and time, and even as a system admin and otherwise. Let's go one layer down. We talked about unified installer. So unified installer is a concept that we started with the Multimodal OS. And this is a very small piece of code, 600 megabytes kind of thing. And this is where you start. And you can build a SAP system out of it. As we talked about before, start with the unified installer. And it's menu driven. So you can pick your C server, you can pick your high availability module, you can pick SAP solution. Just checking. And then if you're a developer, then you do the same thing and you can add your stuff, right? So this is how you're building. From a deployment perspective, it becomes much easier. Now, when we do the Service Pack 1 in a few months, you'll see more enhancements here, where you can do even more, like SUSE Manager, right? You could install using a unified installer. So that's the direction we are going, that it's going to be completely hyper-modular, modular plus, or any name you can give there. But the idea is that things are bite-sized, things are very compartmentalized, where you don't have to spend the time up front, because you just don't know, right, how your application is going to take shape in 1 year, right? So that's the basic idea there. Now we'll summarize at the high level actually how the efficiency is coming along. So we talked about the upfront planning, right? So you have the simplified decision making. If you're going back and forth, you have on-premise license and you want to go to cloud. So bring your own subscription helps you do that. So whether you have Azure, AWS or Google Cloud Platform. From our perspective, the OS is cloud agnostic, so you can have any provider of these three or more. I think several more is supported too. But the idea is it's cloud agnostic. So just like you're silicon agnostic, you're cloud agnostic. So you don't have to worry about if I start today and I want Azure, then can I have it or not? Right? So those are there. If you're a retail company, you don't want AWS, right? Because that's typically a conflict. So you would want something else. If you're a large company, then, or even not a large company, if you're looking at cloud providers, many times you pick more than one, not because if you want a second vendor, but because one of the cloud providers is giving you services that the other provider doesn't give. And there was an interesting case study actually at one of the Gartner conferences by 7-Eleven. And they talked about their multi-cloud strategy. And they said the reason they have multiple clouds is because Google Cloud Platform gives them some things, AWS gives them something, and Azure gives them something. So I don't know which 2 or 3 of them they picked, I don't remember that. But that was the idea. Some customers will go with a second vendor thing because they don't want to put their hat on just one provider, right? And that's a common theme with AWS now. People started with AWS several years ago. Now Azure is caught up and it's very competitive and the people are looking at choices, right? So from our perspective, from the platform perspective, it's cloud agnostic. That's the way we can help the customers make that ease of decision there. Now a simple thing here, internet is a given, connectivity is a given, but if some government applications or deployments do not want a connection, they're offline. So that offline installation is available. Right? Again, that goes into if I buy the system, will it meet my all needs? Right? And IT operations are simplified, right? That we talked about in the context of the install. So now we'll just summarize actually what we talked about multimodal IT, and then we're pretty much at the end of our discussion. We'll open up for Q&A. So in the multimodal IT, now we replace the multimodal OS picture with 315, right? That's what it is. So you get application portability, you can move your applications around, whether it's you have an Apache server, physical, virtual, containerized, doesn't matter. Your systems management gets improved. You can do your patches seamlessly. You have one common code stream. If today you have IBM Z, tomorrow you have Raspberry Pi, you don't have to worry whether that will work or not. Your support becomes easier, and it becomes more simple. Less number of code streams rather than more number of code streams. Very simple. So that's it. Actually, we are at the end of the presentation. Another session on this, if you're interested in the OS perspective, Guy, who is our product manager, he'll be giving another session on SUSE Enterprise 15 and what the roadmap is, what things are there. Right. So his sessions are on Wednesday and Thursday. I'll also have this session. I don't think you want to do a second session with me, but he has 2 sessions you can pick from there. There's some more links here on blogs which talk about multimodal IT. But if you're new to that, if you haven't gotten to know that much, and around why the bridging is interesting or important. And when you're sharing on social media, so you can hashtag multimodal IT. That's where you'll get most of the. If you're on Twitter, and you'll get all your content, all your news things there around multimodal IT. So we can open for Q&A if you guys have interesting thoughts just before the dinner.
And SLUS 15 is out now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we launched it in June last year.
June. Okay, I thought
yeah.
so.
So this year in June we'll have the anniversary. We'll have Service Pack 1.
Okay.
In Service Pack 1, you'll see more of enhancements on the modularity side. You'll have a unified installer doing more things, because that's a trajectory that we're going. You're from which industry?
Automotive.
Automotive, okay.
I like the bridge. That's kind of.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
getting from one to the other.
Yes.
That's exactly what we do.
Yeah, it's a requirement for most businesses, pretty much, right? That you do not want to disturb what you have economically and financially, right? And
Right.
you want just the right things that you need, and if you can add to them, right?
What have you seen regarding the transition from like SLUS 12 to 15 from an industry perspective? Organizations, is that easy to adopt? Is it a hard transition between the two? I think we're just testing in devs, but I think it's SLUS 15. We're not using anything in production environment yet.
So the migration path is something we do a lot of testing for this. What? So the goal is when you want a 12 today,
Yeah.
you can easily upgrade. Yeah. The goal of this is to give customers always a new stack. Right? On the other side, by a SUSE perspective, because of the subscription model, which covers all current versions, right? We do not press you into this. So we give you the options for making this happen. But if you decide to stay, for example, on 12, then feel free to do so, right? Of course, the customers are split as usual, right? There are customers saying, okay, let's move always, more or less always, to the newest version, yeah, with some grace period or whatever it is, because new is better. I mean, in the extent, like the agile people always want the new stuff. And we have customers on the opposite side saying, never touch a running system, right? And never touch means really keeping the system unupdated for many years, which sometimes has security impact and all of this, right? So the update is pretty straightforward. When you look into 12 to 15, the setup difference is not that big, right? When you, for example, still run on 11, we have many customers doing so, then of course you might think about how to update, because we introduced quite some new technologies with 12 and later with 15. You might need to have a different setup to take advantage of this. So that is then finally a business decision to say, do I need these benefits, like systems rollback, which makes life much easier in case something happens, or do I just have a well-working recover scenario and something like that, so I don't need some safety net or so? Then you might say just do the upgrade. So, and yes, we have customers running SLUS for many years, starting with SLUS 8, let's say 15 years ago or so, I don't know what the date was, and then always migrating to the newest. And that is working, right? So I think that is one of the goals we have as an enterprise, to really make sure this is working and does not give you a disruption with respect to your business.
And you can also visit the demo setup firstly and ask a specific question if you're looking for, okay, exactly what are the things that you should look out for.
Sure.
Yeah. And just in case, we also have, I think, 2 or 3 sessions. I don't know.
I think one is on migration.
Specific on migration, because that is a common question.
Yeah.
What do I do? What are the caveats? Yeah, like what might I want to change to get more advantage systems, right? I mean, that is sometimes I see this like remodeling your home, right? So you can do just a little bit of paint on the wall, but the walls are still at the same place. You might say, okay, get rid of a wall and then make something like that, or you could say, okay, get rid of everything inside, yeah, and build something totally different, yeah, because life is changing, business is changing, yeah. When you have set up a system, let's say 5 years ago, yeah, it might be totally differently today. It might be you want to take the advantage to go to microservices, right? So that is something you can't do by an upgrade, of course, yeah? And there's no need to bind such a decision to an upgrade. But when it comes to an upgrade, you might look into your options, and one option is to take advantage of the new technology to move ahead of just upgrade.
What's the situation at your company?
So we, in this particular case, how this comes into play is we have our main system is a gigantic monolithic mainframe, processes millions of transactions. We have ancillary systems that set up at the healthcare basically. And we were at the point with technology where we were about to hit some end of life stuff, and we were about to make some sales, and we needed to really kind of scale out one of our applications. And so we decided to basically redo it in cloud, make it cloud, cloud ready, or and went with 15 because of the silicon agnostic piece of it all. I mean, there were a lot of reasons that, there was more to it than that, but basically it's been a huge lift to get us into a whole brand new technology, and then other applications are already starting to line up behind it, but we wanted to be able to run, like I said, we needed to be able to run in the x86 environment, we needed to be able to run .NET Core, there were just all of these kind of...
Yeah, because you had a lot of systems already.
And we needed to run it on all on Nutanix, which SUSE actually certifies in Nutanix. So
okay.
It was
For conversion infrastructure.
Oh, absolutely. So it was that. That's why we were with 50.
How are you finding Nutanix?
We're still in. We haven't gone to production yet. We've got a 3 more months probably before we do that. I think it's going to be fine.
Okay.
We're using Acropolis and all that stuff, so I think it's going to be fine. This particular application is very heavy on the batch side, less so on the end user, but the next application that's coming behind it is much more on the end user than the batch, so we'll see.
Oh, interesting.
Processing-wise, how that balances out.
What about you guys, other customers? Where are you in your transformation or?
I'm a partner.
What's that?
I'm a partner.
Your partner, okay. So, you have customers.
Yes, we are looking at that. That's why I'm here.
Any other questions, comments?
I would assume, especially moving into a containerized environment, that if you have something running on Slate 15, you can just take that and go, okay, it's in a container. It might not be the best way to do it, but it could potentially be a first step towards moving to a microservice architecture. Is that true?
So, that was a question. So,
Right?
it sounded like a statement.
Yeah, no, sorry.
So,
a little bit of a leading question, but
One approach.
But it is, as a statement, this is true. So,
yeah.
of course, the base idea of containerized application is we need to have an application built for containers, right? So, which often means that when you look at a traditional system where an application contains, let's say, 3 to 4 different pieces, you have it on one system running. In a containerized application, you would split it into separate containers. But of course, the world is not black and white, right? So a container can replicate the traditional setup up to running a complete OS inside. Even that is not what the container people would tell as the right way to create a container. It might be a first step into this direction of container to move stuff. But honestly, we had the same discussion a couple of years ago with virtualization, where there was a prediction in a few years, means today, there is no need for any physical server and setup anymore, right? And honestly, when I look into our customer scenarios, they still use physical servers. So they use virtual servers, they use containers now. So I do not really believe that it will just kick out every traditional method. Yeah? It's another method to use. It has many benefits, I believe. In special, it closes some of the loopholes we have with the traditional setup, like in the area of availability, because it usually is a distributed system. But finally, you need to think in a different way. If you have not the right people to make it happen, it doesn't work well. So, but that doesn't matter if you get a cloud guy, if you get a container guy into the team and ask him to set up a physical server, it will not work. Yeah? And the opposite, the same. It's not about new and old technology, is about the mindset you need to make.
And some people actually do go that route for a shorter, for a quicker way to containerize. So they'll have their applications, instead of changing it, they'll containerize it and then run it, right? And some people actually do it for secure. Now, the containers, one of the issues is that sometimes security comes into the play, right? So the people who have this hyper secure mindset, so they will actually put it in a virtual machine. So the virtual machine is a container, so that because virtualized scenario is more secure than just a container scenario, right? So people go at it from different ways, and typically, I think it's more of the economics, how your teams are structured, and what kind of system, what's your mindset actually in the company. So when we talked about that distraught and digital determinant, right? And the distraught piece could be for several reasons. It could be just a mindset of people, right? And you have a set of people doing things in a certain way, and it's just difficult to change, right? And then you have a new team, they have a different way to do it, and then you do it differently. Many times it comes down to culture and very simple things in life, but that's how it is. Cool, thank you.
And thank you.